I gave up my career to raise my husband's child. For 15 years, only for them to publicly thank his mistress for making him happy for 8 months. I, 40 female, met my husband James, 42 male, when Ellie, his daughter, was 7 years old. Her mother died when she was 5, and James was straining to juggle his work as a construction supervisor with rearing a small child. We initially met at a mutual friend's housewarming celebration, and he appeared fatigued but dedicated to his daughter. Ellie clung to his thigh throughout the evening, shy in front of the multitude of grown-ups. I offered her some of the dessert I'd brought, and she gradually opened up. After our initial meeting, James requested my phone number. Our first date was at a family-friendly restaurant where Ellie was welcome to join us. I recall thinking it was strange to have a child on a first date, but now I see James was testing how I would connect with his daughter. When I quickly connected with Ellie, he was relieved. She was quiet but intellectual, enjoyed drawing, and clearly needed a mother figure in her life. Over the next few months, we had more family dates than romantic ones. James invited me to Ellie's school plays, soccer events, and even parent-teacher conferences. I did not mind. I had always wanted children, and Ellie's stern little face would light up when she saw me in the crowd. 6 months after we began dating, James asked me to move in with them. Their abode was modest but comfortable. I quit my apartment and my work as a middle school English teacher to care for Ellie. The school where I taught was an hour away from James' place, and it would have been impossible to commute with a little child. Instead, I found a part-time job that paid less but provided me the freedom to be present for Ellie. James worked long hours as a construction supervisor, frequently departing before dawn and returning after Ellie went to bed. I was the one who packed Ellie's lunches with small notes inside, assisted with multiplication tables and spelling tests, attended parent-teacher conferences, and nursed her through stomach viruses and ear infections. I taught her how to braid her hair and how to stand up to the girls who bullied her at school. When Ellie was 8, she began calling me Mom, rather than my first name. The first time it happened, I froze, unsure of James' reaction. But he only grinned and later told me that he was relieved Ellie had found someone to fill the position. Ellie was 9 years old when James and I got married. We held a little ceremony in our backyard for just our family and close friends. Ellie was our flower girl and announced to everyone at the wedding that she was getting a real mom, now. My parents, who were initially suspicious of me marrying a man with a child, eventually warmed around to James after seeing how happy the three of us were together. For 15 years, I devoted myself to our family. I never attempted to replace her original mother. We went to her cemetery every year on her birthday, and I encouraged Ellie to keep a journal of things she'd like to tell her mother if she were still here. On Ellie's 18th birthday, I collected these journal entries into a bound book as a gift, along with images of her growing up that I felt her mother would like seeing. When Ellie was applying to colleges, I took her to campus visits, edited her application essays, and sat up late researching scholarship prospects. James went on several trips when his job schedule allowed, but it was my responsibility to assist her prepare for her future on a daily basis. I did not mind. I was proud of the young woman she was becoming and felt satisfied in my role as her mother. James treated us all to dinner to celebrate Ellie's college acceptance letters. He raised a drink to Ellie's bright future and praised me for being the best mother she could have hoped for. That night, I sobbed happy tears, knowing that despite the hardships, we had successfully built a loving family. When Ellie decided to take a gap year after her second year of college to discover herself, James was sad, but I supported her decision. I assisted her in finding a part-time work at a nearby store and encouraged her to use her leisure time to pursue interests she had not had time for in school. She resumed painting, something she had enjoyed as a child but abandoned in high school when academics became increasingly difficult. Ellie celebrated her 22nd birthday last month. We prepared a large supper at an expensive Italian restaurant downtown that Ellie had always wanted to visit. I made appointments weeks in advance to secure the private dining room with the greatest view of the city. James insisted on inviting some of his coworkers, which seemed unusual given that this was a family gathering, but I didn't question it. I assumed he was proud and wanted to show off our talented daughter. I spent weeks arranging the event, including ordering a special cake with an edible image of Ellie's favorite childhood photo and purchasing a silver bracelet engraved with her birth date and a short message. To my daughter, with love always. I wrapped it in her favorite color paper and enclosed a card with a lengthy note about how proud I was of the woman she had become. The day of the dinner, I picked up the cake, had my hair done, and donned the blue dress Ellie had helped me choose during our last shopping trip together. I arrived at the restaurant early to ensure that everything was perfect: the table decorations, the reserved seating arrangement, and the special dessert menu I had planned with the chef. James and Ellie came together after he picked her up from her friend's place, where she was getting dressed. Ellie hugged me briefly, but she appeared distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. James was similarly remote, checking the door every few minutes as guests arrived. About 20 people went, including my sister and her husband, several of Ellie's high school and college pals, and some James coworkers whom I had never met before. Laura, 35F, in particular, arrived late and made a strong impression. She was dressed in a form-fitting crimson dress and quickly swept the room until she spotted James. She seemed at ease around him from the moment she arrived, laughing loudly at all of his jokes and stroking his arm several times during conversation. I noted this but disregarded it as friendly office behavior, though I did question why I had never heard of her before if they were close colleagues. During supper, I sat at one end of the long table with my sister, while James sat at the other end, beside Laura and across from Ellie. This seating arrangement had not been in my plans. I anticipated our family to sit together, but James had changed them as they arrived, claiming it would allow for greater communication. Throughout the meal, I attempted to engage with the guests around me, but my attention was drawn to the conversation between James, Laura, and Ellie. They were swapping inside jokes and giggling in a way that made me feel strangely alienated from my own daughter's birthday party. After the main meal, the waitress brought out the bespoke cake that I had requested. I stood up to say a few words about Ellie, recalling our first meeting and expressing my admiration for the kind, clever young woman she had grown into. James checked his watch during my brief speech, and Ellie smiled nicely but appeared uneasy. After I sat down, Ellie stood up to make her own speech. She thanked her friends for coming, and then thanked her father for always supporting her financially and allowing her to pursue her aspirations. I waited for her to recognize my position in her life. She glanced directly at Laura and stated, "I'd like to thank Laura for making my father happy over the last 8 months. It's so lovely to see him grin again." The table became utterly silent. Laura gazed down at her plate with a faint, happy smile as James' face became scarlet. I looked about, perplexed, then returned to Ellie, who continued, "I know it's been hard keeping your relationship secret, but I'm glad we don't have to pretend anymore. Laura has been like a friend to me, and I'm happy Dad has found someone who really understands him." Several visitors moved uneasily in their chairs. My sister reached under the table and grasped my hand firmly. I stared at James, who eventually looked at me but couldn't keep my eyes. Laura reached over and squeezed his hand publicly before raising her wineglass to Ellie. "Thanks." In that moment, I realized that my husband had been having an affair with this lady for 8 months, and my stepdaughter, the girl I had nurtured and loved for 15 years, had been aware of it the whole time. Not only had she maintained their secret, but she had picked this public occasion, a celebration I had meticulously arranged, to subject me to humiliation. Without saying anything, I stood up, grabbed my purse, and left the restaurant. I could hear whispers behind me and someone screaming my name, but I didn't turn around. Outside, I noticed I was shaking. I groped for my car keys as footsteps approached from behind me. James screamed out my name as he jogged across the parking lot. When he caught up with me, he grabbed my arm and prevented me from getting into my car. "Let me explain. This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "How long?" I inquired, drawing my arm away from him. "It doesn't matter," he replied, running his hand through his hair. "Things between us haven't been right for years. You must have felt it too." 8 months, according to our daughter," I said. "Our daughter, who you turned against me." James attempted to explain that his connection with Laura just happened after they worked together on a project. He claimed they hadn't intended to fall in love, but he had been sad for years and didn't know what to tell me. He claimed Laura understood him in ways I never did, and that Ellie accepted their relationship because she saw how happy Laura made him. "I was going to tell you after Ellie's birthday," stated the gentleman. "I never wanted you to find out like this." I wondered if the previous 15 years had meant anything to him. He turned his head away. "You've been a good stepmother to Ellie, and I'll always be grateful for that. But Laura and we connect on a different level. She's more aligned with my goals for the future." I got into my car and drove to my sister's house that night, leaving the gift for Ellie in the trunk. My sister arrived home an hour later, bringing my coat that I had left at the restaurant and saying that most of the people had left immediately after my departure, leaving an uneasy celebration that swiftly dissipated. The following day, I returned home while James was at work. I packed my essentials, clothes, personal documents, family photos, and a few sentimental items I couldn't bear to part with. I realized some of Laura's belongings were already in our bedroom. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note indicating that I would be filing for divorce. I did not mention Ellie in the note. I couldn't find words to describe the magnitude of the betrayal. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed with my sister while looking for a new apartment and met with a divorce attorney. I took a leave of absence from my part-time job, unable to concentrate on lesson preparations and student requirements while my personal life was in disarray. My sister assisted me in my search for affordable flats, and I eventually found a one-bedroom place in a different section of town, away from the area where I might run across James or Ellie. Throughout those weeks, James called and texted incessantly, alternately apologizing for how I found out and blaming me for being emotionally distant during our marriage. He felt I concentrated too much on Ellie and not enough on him. That I'd ceased being the lady he married. That I did not encourage his professional objectives. With each message, his tone became more accusing, as if his affair was my responsibility. I didn't react to the majority of his communications, instead corresponding with my lawyer about practical things about our shared finances and the house. After a particularly unpleasant voicemail in which he described me as frigid and cruel, I eventually blocked his number. Ellie also called multiple times, leaving voicemails in which she apologized but stated that she was only trying to encourage her father's pleasure. In one message, she explained that Laura had first confided in her about her attraction to James, making Ellie feel special and included in an adult secret. Later messages became defensive, with Ellie claiming that she didn't understand why I was overreacting and that these things happen in families all the time. I didn't answer any of her texts because I couldn't reconcile the daughter I raised with the young woman who had so openly deceived me. 3 weeks after moving out, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Ellie, texting on a friend's phone. "I need to talk to you urgently. Please. It's important." Against my better judgment and my sister's advice, I agreed to meet her in a little diner near my new apartment the next day. When I got to the diner, I scarcely recognized her. Her normally immaculate appearance was disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept for days. Her clothing was crumpled, her hair was dirty and hurriedly pulled back, and black circles surrounded her eyes. She was nervously shredding a paper napkin and burst into tears when she saw me. I sat across from her, keeping my emotional distance despite her obvious distress. When the waitress arrived, I ordered a coffee I didn't want just to give Ellie time to settle herself. When the waitress left, Ellie dried her eyes with the shredded napkin and started speaking quickly between sobs. Ellie stated that Laura had moved into our house a few days after I departed. She had reclaimed the master bedroom, replaced family portraits with her own artwork, and began remodeling the living room without consulting James or Ellie. Laura announced she was pregnant with James's kid 2 weeks later, during a dinner at which Ellie was already feeling uneasy in what had previously been her family home. According to Ellie, James appeared stunned by the news but quickly recovered, toasting to their new beginning. After Laura went to bed that night, James summoned Ellie to his home office. He informed her that they intended to turn her bedroom into a nursery and that she needed to move out. He advised she take the modest guest room in the basement if she wished to remain. When Ellie objected, pointing out that the basement room lacked sufficient windows and that she had lived in her room since childhood, James reminded her she was now an adult who needed to support their new family. He reminded her that she had been supportive of his relationship with Laura from the start and questioned why she was now being tough. He claimed I was being selfish. Ellie informed me that he believed Laura required less stress during her pregnancy and that her attitude was creating a toxic environment. Ellie had relocated her necessary possessions to a friend's apartment the next day, believing it to be temporary until she could find her own place. However, her part-time retail job did not give enough income to pay for an apartment in our pricey city, and she had missed far too many shifts during the crisis. When she got back to work, her manager informed her that she had been replaced. She now had no income, no permanent place to live, and her friend's patience had worn thin after a week of couch surfing. "I tried applying for other jobs," Ellie told me, "but I keep breaking down during interviews. I can't focus. I can't sleep. I don't know what to do." I sat there, stunned, listening to her narrative and watched tears trickle down the face of the girl I had raised, the young woman who now appeared hopelessly lost. After she finished speaking, I inquired, "Did you know about their affair the entire time?" Ellie nodded slowly before looking down at the table. "Laura told me first," she confessed. "She came to the store where I worked about 8 months ago. She bought me lunch and told me she and Dad had feelings for each other. She said she wanted my blessing before things got serious." Ellie went on to tell how Laura had formed a connection with her, taking her shopping and her extravagant gifts that James could never afford on his own wage. Laura had told Ellie that they will soon be a real family, and that I was preventing her father from experiencing true happiness. According to Laura, James had chosen me because he needed help parenting Ellie, but now that Ellie was older, he deserved a chance at true love. "She made it sound romantic," Ellie commented quietly. "Like Dad had sacrificed his happiness for years and finally deserved something for himself." Ellie acknowledged that she had helped them plan their encounters, including lying to me about James's location when he was actually with Laura. She had removed suspicious text messages from James's phone when he left it unattended, and she had once diverted my attention with a staged issue regarding a college assignment so James could meet Laura for a weekend getaway. Laura said you would understand eventually, Ellie added. She said most modern families go through transitions like this, and we would all be friends someday. I took a long breath and reminded Ellie of everything I'd given up for her, including my full-time teaching job, independence, and 15 years of my own life. I pointed out that I had attended every school function, but James had missed the majority of them due to work. I had taught her to drive, spending hours in parking lots and on quiet streets, while James said he lacked the patience. Ellie sobbed harder with each example, nodding to acknowledge the shared memories. And how did you repay that devotion? I asked. You lied to my face for 8 months. You helped your father deceive me. You sat in our home, eating meals I cooked, accepting gifts I bought, all while knowing that the two people I loved most in the world were betraying me. I told Ellie that her betrayal hurt more than James since I never expected her to choose me over her biological father. I had always taught her that blood links were vital and sacred, but I raised her as if she were my own daughter, with all of my maternal love. And she had viewed me as disposable, a placeholder to be dumped when no longer required. Then I stood up, paid for my untouched coffee, and told Ellie that she had made her decision 8 months earlier to help her father cheat. I will not be helping you now. But where am I supposed to go? Ellie inquired, her voice increasing with panic. I have nowhere to live, no job. Dad won't take my calls anymore, and Laura has changed the locks on the house. I tried to get my remaining things yesterday, and they wouldn't let me in. That's not my problem, I said. You're an adult, Ellie, figure it out. Ellie shouted out to me as I walked out of the diner, saying that she had made a mistake and that James had twisted her. She claimed Laura had promised they would all live happily together, but she had no idea he would forsake her once she was no longer helpful to their narrative. Please, she sobbed as I approached the door. You're the only mother I've ever really known. I paused, resting my hand on the door handle. I recognized not the young woman who had betrayed me, but the 7-year-old girl who had previously clung to my knee during thunderstorms. Then I remembered her expression when she thanked Laura at the birthday dinner, and I pushed the door open without looking back. That night, I blocked Ellie's phone number and all of her social media accounts. I also banned the phone numbers of mutual acquaintances who could attempt to contact me on her behalf. I changed my email address and informed my office that I would not be accepting personal visitors. 2 days later, my sister informed me that Ellie had written on social media about being homeless and betrayed by her family. The post made vague references to mistakes and regrets while portraying her as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. Several relatives have subsequently contacted me, claiming that I am being overly harsh and that Ellie is still young and made a mistake. They say I've raised her for 15 years and shouldn't forsake her now, no matter what she has done. Part of me feels bad about Ellie's circumstances. She is young, and her father has plainly exploited her with the help of his lover. I know how convincing James can be when he wants something, and how easy he can make others feel guilty when they disagree with him. I saw this pattern throughout our marriage but always made excuses for him. But another part of me can't forgive her active role in wrecking my marriage and our family. She did more than simply keep their affair a secret. She also aided it by interfering and fabricating alibis. She watched as I continued to love and care for her despite knowing I was being duped. And then she publicly insulted me on her birthday in front of friends and family, seemingly without remorse, until the scenario backfired on her. My sister thinks I should assist Ellie locate a place to stay or lend her money for a security deposit. She claims that, despite everything, I am the closest thing Ellie has to a mother. But I doubt I can encounter her again without remembering her betrayal. So, Ada for refusing to assist my stepdaughter after she helped my husband cheat on me and is now dealing with the consequences of her actions. Edit. Thank you for your responses. To clarify several points that people have inquired about. Yes, I legally adopted Ellie when she was 11, so I am her adoptive mother, not simply stepmother. Ellie is now taking a gap year from college. She has college loans and a little scholarship, but she intended to work to save for next year's expenditures. James and I do not have biological children together. I was unable to have children because of medical difficulties uncovered after our marriage. The house is in both of our names, but I left because I couldn't take being there with the memories. My lawyer is in charge of dividing assets. Many people inquired about Ellie's grandparents. James' parents died many years ago, and his former in-laws, Ellie's maternal grandparents, relocated to another country after their daughter died and had little touch with the family. Update 1. It's been a week since I last posted. My lawyer informed me that James wanted to keep the house because Laura is pregnant, and he offered me a lower settlement than I was entitled to. I refused his offer. Meanwhile, a mutual acquaintance informed me that Ellie is now staying with one of James' relatives, who contacted her after reading her social media posts. Update 2. 2 weeks after my original post, I received a handwritten letter from Ellie yesterday. She asked for neither money nor a place to stay. Instead, she published a thorough narrative of how Laura had slowly eased her way into their lives, bringing Ellie things and behaving like a friend while continually pointing out my apparent failings as a wife and mother. Ellie said that she now understands Laura targeted her as a ploy to get to James, and she truly regrets betraying me. She concluded the letter by stating that she does not expect forgiveness but wanted me to know that she recognizes the gravity of her mistake. I have not responded to the letter yet. I'm still absorbing things and working on finalizing my divorce. My lawyer thinks James is now making a more acceptable deal because I have not backed down. Final update. It's been a month since my initial post. The divorce case is moving along. James finally consented to a fair asset distribution after my lawyer threatened to summon Laura for a deposition. I finally contacted Ellie last week after getting her second letter. We met for lunch. Ellie apologized again and admitted that she couldn't erase the damage she had done. She found a tiny apartment with a roommate and will start a new job next week. She did not ask for financial assistance again. I informed Ellie that I needed more time before I could contemplate restoring our relationship. Our trust has been entirely shattered, and I'm not sure it can be mended. I did, however, provide her with the contact information for a therapist who could assist her in processing what had occurred. Several people have asked me if I regret leaving the restaurant that night without confronting James and Laura openly. I do not. Maintaining my dignity was more essential than causing a scene. The fact that their new happy family fell apart so swiftly demonstrates that relationships formed on lies are rarely sustainable. Thank you to everyone who offered their opinions and advice. I am still recuperating, but I am also moving on with my life.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.